This is Conversation Balloons, a podcast of interviews with experts and friends about all things generational. I'm your host, Leah Farish. Friends, I'm glad you're here to join us again for this episode sponsored by the Herzog Foundation. And I am bringing back Dr. Tim Elmore, and he is a maven on Gen Z, and he has a new book called The Future Begins with Z, 9 Strategies to Lead Gen Z as They Disrupt the Workplace. And we will be talking with a viewpoint toward how employers could work with this generation. But also, if you're not a business owner or employer, I think you'll really benefit from greater understanding of what the people in this age cohort are like, what they want, and how older people can relate to them and work with them. Tim, thank you for coming on.
Always good to be with you, Leah. This is going to be a great conversation.
If you haven't heard me introduce Tim Elmore before, that he has written over 25 books, some of them bestsellers. You may have heard him on Fox Business, read him in USA Today or Psychology Today. He has trained companies such as Coca-Cola, Home Depot, the U.S. Department of Justice, the NFL. And Tim, I just want to encourage you to swing for the fences next time and really try to hit some influential
people. Yes.
People, yeah.
Yeah.
In connection with that, we were talking in January about some people you're meeting with and where you're getting some of your information about the workplace in Gen Z. Would you tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. Well, the book launched officially on November 3rd, or November 4th, I guess it was. And I decided to host a book launch like many authors do. But what shocked me was the keen interest they had in this particular subject. How do we manage and lead, and not just lead, but leverage the strengths that these young professionals bring with them? Mm-hmm. So we had over 400. I was thinking that maybe 200 would come. And we had VIP tables up front because Coca-Cola was there. The Atlanta Hawks were there. Delta, Chick-fil-A. It was just a crazy kind of who's who. And then, Leah, after the hour book launch, and everybody got a free book that came, I went back to kind of a VIP room where we had 45 of the top brands in the room, including those I just mentioned. And we talked about what are our best practices? What are we doing to not only win them over and keep them, but to really make the most of them? And I'm hoping in this conversation, people will hear why I am such an advocate.
Tell us some ways in which Gen Z is different from the other age cohorts.
Today, we all have our own screen in our hands. Mm-hmm. And now a teen or a 20-something could be on fundamentally different platforms than their supervisor or their mama. So a parent might know their teenage daughter has an Instagram account, but they have no idea she has 6 Finsta accounts, fake Instagram, where she's developed personas for herself and is talking to Lord knows who. So I don't say that as an old geezer. I say that as someone, this explains why we're so different. But it is my belief, if we can somehow get past merely tolerating them and find out who they are, they know stuff. And in fact, they're more intuitive about the future than I am. So that's what I'm really after in this book, to give people a game plan on really pulling out the very best in this generation. Yeah.
Thanks. Yeah. And COVID as well has shaped them, and it has affected the isolation they experience has affected how they relate in the workplace and what they want from that work environment.
They are a lonely generation. Now, globally speaking, every generation is registering lonely today. It's really sad, but Gen Z would register the most lonely. And so when they come to work, they seek belonging more so than any other generation. In my focus groups, I found out that Gen Zers see a difference between belonging and fitting in. The difference in their mind that I heard was fitting in feels like I come to work and you're forcing a round peg in a square hole. I've got to change my hair or change the nose ring or whatever to fit in. And sometimes we need them to. But belonging is I can bring precisely who I am to this team, but do so on behalf of the larger picture. It isn't about me, it's about something bigger, but I get to be truly who I am. And they fare the best with companies that allow for that Gen Zer to come in and be who they are. Quick story that might illustrate the question or the answer to the question you're asking, Leah. Matt is a supervisor here in town where I live, and he has a team of about 30. They had a problem that they weren't able to solve. And so Matt invited his entire team to come to a team meeting twice to see if they could solve this problem. It was a big one. Well, Ashley was clearly the youngest team member on this team. She was in her early 20s. And Matt looked over at her during the meeting several times, and she was looking down on her phone, barely looking up, not really talking to anybody. And Matt assumed, doggone it, this is the classic Gen Zer, that sort of thing. In fact, so much so that he said, Ashley, we need to meet on Monday. I need to talk to you about developing some skills, for such meetings. Well, when Monday rolled around, she burst into Matt's office, burst into it saying, I think I got it. I think I got it. He says, got what? The answer to our problem. And he said, what are you talking about? All the while she was looking at her phone, she wasn't on TikTok or Instagram. She's finding the answer on ChatGPT and other AI platforms. And she was quiet because she was searching. And Matt said, she actually came up with the answer to our problem that millennials and Gen Xers and boomers had not come up with. And I thought, this is what I love.
Yeah.
If we get past what we stereotype and say, maybe they're doing work, who knows what could happen. Yeah.
Yeah, you talk about them, you mentioned they're fiscally conservative, which was a little surprising. I don't think politically fiscally conservative, but you said they have their 75% have sights set on becoming entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
70% want health insurance. That's a must in their contract.
Yep.
35% plan to save for retirement in their 20s.
Yeah.
They seem to be very keen on using their opportunity to gain funds for work-life balance for the future.
Yeah.
Which is different. I mean,
yeah.
Most people just, signed up for a wage and didn't think about 10, 30 years from now. Why is that?
I think Gen Z has been observing far more than we think they have. They've watched older generations, sometimes their parents. And Leah, they have learned, at least in their minds, they feel like they have learned, and they're countering some of the habits. For instance, I have a chapter in the book where I talk about the myths that we have believed about Gen Z. One of the myths is, well, I don't think they really want to work, And the evidence for this, we say, is, right when 5 o'clock rolls around, they leave. Even if they're working in the middle of a project, they just cut out at 5, not a minute longer, and they're gone. And when I brought this up to Gen Zers, I heard why this is true. I'll never forget Natalie, a 21-year-old in LA, said, Dr. Tim, can I tell you why I leave right at 5? I said, sure. She said, I leave right at 5 because I have to rush over to another job. I don't make enough money here to pay the bills here in LA. And after my second job, I rush off to take care of my mother who has stage 4 cancer. Suddenly I realized, she's got quite a work ethic, contrary to what I assumed. So now, is that always true? No, it's not. And there's people in every generation that are lazy and don't want to work, but we need to listen before we judge. Another one of those myths, by the way, is they demand work-life balance because their work ethic is tainted or whatever. I feel like I kept hearing in my research that they saw enough workaholics in their mom and dad's generation or their grandparents' generation, and they don't want that. They might have seen dad ruin the holidays because he was married to his job, not their mother, or maybe he divorced. And now that happens for good reasons sometimes, but they don't want that to happen.
Part of that is their orientation and maintaining
Yeah.
their mental health, which
Yeah.
adults
Yes,
ahead of them have cultivated that concern in them, I think.
I do too. Yeah.
Perhaps it's more of a sensitivity than we expected, but
Yeah.
both of your illustrations were of people who did not realize
Yeah.
the impression they were making,
Yeah. Yeah.
even while they were making contributions and were acting responsibly.
Yeah.
They didn't know how to project
Yeah.
themselves, and
Yes.
I think that also has come from observing so much life from a screen,
Mhm.
where
Yep.
you the whatever you're giving off isn't picked up by the
Yeah.
screen.
Yeah. Yeah. You're
Or
right.
yeah, or you very selectively create the impression, and when that camera is off, you've turned it off, and you're not responsible for the impression you're making to other people, or all the texting and things. There's so much nonverbal
Yeah.
that doesn't get conveyed, and you don't have to deal with what impact that would have on somebody.
Yeah. No, you're exactly right. That's true. Yeah.
And I think for boys, the video game experience
Mm.
was very much like that. They had a lot of agency through avatars
Yeah.
that
Yeah. Yeah.
really didn't pick up on what they really were doing. And I think one of the impacts of video games on boys, which they would play for 16 hours sometimes growing up, and now as young men, they not only did they in a lot of the types of games inflict pain on others, but it wasn't real, and they didn't have to deal with
Yeah. Right.
that.
The
But
consequence.
also they would have pain inflicted on them, but
Yeah.
it didn't really hurt.
Yeah. Yeah. No, you're
So
exactly right. It's been a very, if I can say this without sounding horrible, they've grown up in a world that we created, which was very artificial.
yes.
Artificial thrills, artificial porn is artificial intimacy. It's not really intimacy. So they've doused themselves with this because we allowed them to have it.
Oh
But
yeah.
it's created. I did a book some years ago called Artificial Maturity. A
Hmm.
kid that's been overexposed to information far earlier than they're ready, but underexposed to firsthand experiences later than they're ready,
Hmm.
creates a maturity that seems real, but it's not real. So we need to introduce these experiences to them, of course, and that's what I kind of lobby for in this book. We've got to help them catch up, not just cognitively. They've already gotten there cognitively, but socially and emotionally and spiritually as well. Yeah.
Another paradox that I observed in your book is that um, they are empathetic, but they're empathetic toward kind of an abstract set of groups outside of themselves.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet, this is a generation that would, observe a crime being committed right in front of them and video it and
Yeah.
laugh
Instead of
and
helping.
post
Yeah.
it on
Yeah.
social media.
Yeah. Yeah.
This has never been imagined
Yeah.
before, and certainly again the way they they have great compassion and concern for the environment and things like that, and yet the people around them, they don't understand. Well, if I stay home for a mental health day, other people have to pick up
Yeah. Yeah.
slack.
No doubt.
Um, so they're very paradoxical
Yeah.
people, and yet I think I loved something you said at one point in the strategy was they're very oriented to the collective. Many of them favor socialism, and you can talk about your company as the collective.
Mm-hmm.
This you can talk about. I don't think you said this, but I was thinking when someone says, "I need to take a mental health day the next 2 days," you can say, Okay, let's talk about that in terms of equity.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Um, so and so has never asked for that, and I have to be, as your employer, sensitive to
Yeah.
balancing the needs of everyone and,
Yeah.
and what happens here if you're not with us.
Yeah. I'll tell you a quick story. My wife was at the Atlanta airport where we live. She went to get a cup of coffee. There was just one person working. And my wife said, do you not have any teammates? She goes, no, the two people that were supposed to be here with me called in this morning and said, I won't be there today. I need a mental health day. I was out late at a party last night and I'm not my best self. And I think, again, they're not realizing the ramifications on others.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah. In fact, I love, if you don't mind, I want to double click on the word you used just then, paradox. It is a generation of paradox. I was reminded of this over and over. Two quick ones. One is they do bring a high sense of agency. And listeners, if you don't use that word every day, that means a high sense of self-sufficiency. I've got this. I have a phone in my hand and I know what I'm doing, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But at the same time, a high sense of anxiety. So mental health issues have been normalized, panic attacks and anxiety and depression. So think about this. Agency says, I got this. Anxiety says, I don't got this and I need help. They will come in as young employees with some authority that doesn't require a title or a position. They have it because they are intuitive about smart technology. They know artificial intelligence. They see where culture's going. They have a visibility on the future more than I do. At the same time, the age of authority is going down. The age of maturity is going up. You and I have talked before, I think, Leah, about how many employers are saying 26 is the new 18. What we once expected at 18 years old, it's now happening later and later. So cognitively advanced, but socially, emotionally behind. It's a paradox. It is not a judgment. We're going to have to listen more than we ever used to listen to young people, but we're going to have to coach more than we ever used to coach
Yes.
young people. Yeah.
Tell me about some strategies that even parents or friends of younger people can use given these paradoxes.
Yeah.
Because they like you said, they have this high sense of agency. Often they're ambitious. They expect to be in leadership soon. They expect their voices to be heard.
Yeah.
You said 75% have their sights set on becoming entrepreneurs. They'd rather start something than join something.
Yeah.
One thing I thought a recommendation you made was very good about the onboarding, about the interview process.
Yeah.
To include a younger person on the team that does the interviewing and onboarding, that it's someone very close in age that can use simple language or non-technical jargon that they understand, and getting permission to give them feedback. Connecting before you correct, which I thought was great in a family setting.
No doubt. Yeah.
That's wisdom.
Yeah, it is.
What are some other things that people can do to deal with these paradoxes in these young people?
We are grateful that Conversation Balloons is part of the Herzog Foundation podcast network. If you're new here, the Herzog Foundation is dedicated to strengthening Christian education across the country, helping parents, teachers, grandparents, and school leaders pass on faith, wisdom, and stability from one generation to the next. They support Christian schools of all kinds with free top-tier training events, help launch schools through programs like Schoolbox, and keep families informed through a growing media network, including this podcast and The Lion, their daily news publication covering stories at the intersection of faith, family, and education. We are honored that Conversation Balloons sits alongside so many thoughtful voices in the Herzog Foundation Podcast Network. To learn more about the Foundation's mission and the tools they offer to Christian families and schools, visit herzogfoundation.com.
Leah, you just reminded me, when I go out and speak on this subject to organizations and companies, I usually find the listeners in the audience, with one ear they listen as a professional, with the other ear they listen as a parent, because they've got a young person very near and dear to their heart. So a couple of acronyms. In terms of interviewing, I really believe interviews ought to look differently with Gen Zers. That doesn't mean special rights. It just means you realize who you have in front of you is going to be different. So I use the word, it's an acronym, PERKS, P-E-R-K-S. I think along with the job questions you're surely going to ask as a hiring manager, find out their preferences. Sometimes they bring in a preference for, this is what I wish were true at this job. And sometimes you might go, oh, we can do that. Mm-hmm. But you also can tell a lot about a person by them sharing their wishes. The letter E is expectations. That's stronger than preferences. Mm-hmm. I have found over my career that conflict expands based on the distance between expectations and reality. So we need to find those out right away. The letter R is requirements. Leah, there is a disproportionate amount of young people starting their careers demanding certain things to be true. We're going to march at this rally, or we're going to do this or that. None of them are bad necessarily, but that's the time you find out and you can say back, hey, that's never going to happen here. I need to dismiss you and wish you well. Rather than 8 months into the job and they're gossiping or causing division in department because we're not doing what they want.
Yeah, I think you called those demands.
Yes.
Yeah, those need to be clarified right before hiring.
Absolutely. And they bring a bunch. The letter K.
And by the way, before we go on to the next letter, if you're going to have one of your kids move back in at age 23, or you're going to have rent them a house to get them started or whatever, these are the kinds of things that, you could listen from Tim about keeping things clear and arranging expectations on both sides.
No doubt about it. Well said. I think we're going to have to do that as moms and dads as well as supervisors. So the letter K in PERKS is keys. I think it's good to find the keys to their heart. Mm-hmm. It may not be job related, but just knowing who they are as a human being means the world to them. And it gives you a hallway conversation later on if you hire them. How about those cubs, And then the letter S, of course, is salary. If you're hiring for a job, even though that may have been posted on the website, it's almost always good to have a face-to-face conversation and say, here's the compensation package. One reason for this is, now get ready, the majority of Gen Zers in 2025 survey are bringing mom and dad with them to the job interview. They're either out in the parking lot or mama's sitting right there to negotiate that compensation package. I think the Gen Z is embarrassed, but it's happening to a ridiculous degree right now.
Okay, now again, a paradox. How does that fit in with their sense of agency?
Yeah, well, sometimes I think mama is intruding, if I may be so bold right now. So we have a generation, we not only have a new generation of kids today, we have a whole new generation of parents. Oftentimes we overfunction and we prepare the path for the child, not the child for the path. And Leah, I know where you stand on that. You are a developer of people, and especially young people. We have sometimes parented out of our own need. I just talked to a mom that said, I know helicopter parenting is wrong, but it just feels good to me. She's admitting, I know. So they are going to come in with some audacity.
In talking about, again, the interviewing and onboarding, one thing I really was intrigued with, that 70% of them said they wanted a 2-week or less interview process, that improves the likelihood of their taking the job. And so does that mean that they're impatient, or does that mean that they just have a sense of there are lots of fish out in the sea?
Yeah, they do feel the competition for jobs. In fact, what's funny to me is both employer and employee are feeling the competition. They both feel like they're the victim in the equation.
Yeah.
Here's what I'd say. Gen Z expressed to me, we're very aware that AI is taking over the interview process and the weeding,
Oh.
the filtering process. It is.
Oh.
So they want to make sure that there's a process where there's going back and forth, and it's not just artificial intelligence. Somebody emailed them and said, thanks for the interview, blah, blah, blah. Or they have a second round. We always do 3 rounds of interviews at my organization, and we try to get it all done within 10 to 14 days. So I think they might have other lines in the ocean or the lake, that they're fishing from. And if you don't get to it, you're a number, and they feel like a number as well. So yeah, I'll stop there.
Yeah, you said they like once they hear you're hired, but between that time and when they're actually there, they want more contact.
Yes, absolutely.
And that speaks to me of like the college admissions process, which I know people.
Yeah.
Getting kids to college this day, it's a tougher game. It's a tough sell.
It is.
And this kind of behavior by the employer can work for the admissions officer as well.
So let me give you another little strategy. You asked for strategies. When giving feedback, I have found I give feedback to young team members different than I do anybody that's 40 and over. And maybe you do too, listeners, but here's another acronym. You know how for years and years and years, we've always said, this is the leg you got to stand on, meaning this is something you can take to the bank.
Yeah.
ALEG, a leg, give me my 4-step process that I do every single time. I did this for me, and then I put it in the book because I thought it might be helpful for someone else. So when I need to correct somebody, I need to offer some firm feedback, and they may be fragile. I start with asking. Instead of telling them what they've done wrong, which is what I want to do, I ask. And maybe it's a simple question like, what was your thought process behind that decision you made? Or can you help me understand why you did that? Those questions go a long way because they expect us to correct them. And instead I'm asking. When you ask someone about what they've done, they feel valued. The letter L is listen. I think it does very little good to ask if we're not willing to do the art of listening, active listening. When I listen, they feel heard. And Leah, I put this in the book, but to have a voice and be heard is something they want from week 1. And of course, we would say, you got to be around here a year, buddy, before we listen to you. But they want to be heard on week 1. So ask, they feel valued. Listen, they feel heard. The letter E, empathize. This is something I've had to learn, I'm ashamed to say, I thought I was empathetic. And then I discovered Gen Z.
I bet everybody thinks they're empathetic.
Yes, I think you're right. And then we find out through a real life experience, not so much. So empathizing for me has meant I'm listening, but I'm non-verbally, paraverbally, and then verbally saying things like, oh, I get what you're saying. Or I had no idea that happened to you last year. Or, wow, I bet you felt horrible when that happened. But now I'm letting them know I understand. Think with me.
Yeah, like even matching their body language.
Yes, of course. So ask, they feel valued. Listen, they feel heard. Empathize, they feel understood. Now I have earned my right to practice the letter G in a leg, which is to guide them. And that's what I wanted to do from the very beginning. But I've earned my right through a bridge I built, not a badge I wear. And that's what Gen Z longs for, is relationship with their leader. Yeah.
Yeah, you said 90% of them want human, interaction at work.
Yeah.
And they want multiple check-ins
Daily.
with their superiors during the day.
Yeah. Yeah. I talk to bosses and they go, I'm so sorry, I can't do that. But that's your wish. That's that wish thing I talked about earlier. And if you think about it, if they played video games as a teenager or college student, they had a lot of check-ins. It was always what level you're on. So I think they're wanting that. And of course, you have to come up with norms and what's realistic. But I'm telling you, here's a quote I put in the book. David Augsburger said, being heard is so close to being loved that for the average person, it's indistinguishable.
Oh,
it's powerful, and I think they would say that if they could. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And, you know, that's helpful for several reasons because if they do want to be heard from day one, to um, incorporate that into their early experience
Yeah.
at the job and ask. You know, you said the importance of
Yeah.
asking. You
Yeah.
might be proactive on that, and you might
Yeah.
say, because we are asking, we can't always implement everything, but
Yeah. Yeah.
we care what you think. We want to know
Yes.
your opinion,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you will evolve at this company, and our company will evolve.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, we're open to
Yep.
the new person and the new hire. One thing I loved, you talked about in the onboarding process if you're a company, but even as a family member,
Yeah.
give them experiences
Yeah.
that they can take a picture of and post on social
Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
This was my first day at work. They gave me balloons or something,
That's right.
something visual, something
Yeah.
because they think that way. And that leads me to ask your EPIC
Yeah.
acronym
Yeah.
because I think that helps
Yeah.
all kinds of people understand this generation.
Yeah, for sure. So I think every generation prefers a communication strategy of EPIC, but Gen Z certainly does. The letter E in EPIC reminds me when I communicate, I need to be experiential. They aren't looking for some sage on the stage with a talk. I do think they're looking for a guide on the side that provides an experience from which you can dialogue. So
Mhm.
be experiential, create an environment or an experience from which you can dialogue. The letter P is participatory. That means let them participate in the outcomes of where this communication is going or where this program is going. I have found that Gen Z supports what they help create. They
Mhm.
support what they help create. We
That's
all,
just human nature.
yeah, it really is. If you want buy-in, make sure you let them weigh in. Yeah. And then the letter I is image rich. Think about it. They grew up on a screen. I know that's cliche, but TikTok and Instagram and everything else, it's all visuals. So images are the language of the 21st century. Use an image to anchor the big idea you want to get across. Pictures beat lectures every day. That's why we developed, Leah, that's why I developed the Habitudes. It's an image-based thing that Mary Martha Black loved, and wanted us to get out everywhere, but
Mhm.
it's an image-based learning plan. And then the letter C, connected. Give them a chance to connect with you and with each other in this messaging that you have. So experiential, participatory, image-rich, and connected tends to work really well if you want to
Mhm.
engage a Gen Z member.
I I like what you said about you might, as an employer, reconsider what you think of as job qualifications.
Mm-hmm.
These young people have mooked and hacked and
Yeah.
used AI, and they have informed themselves.
Yes.
I think our education system hasn't done all that great a job
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
giving our kids a database of information, but it's there now,
Yeah. It
and
sure is.
they're finding it. And but the traditional, well, you need this certification, you need a diploma you need this degree. It just isn't wearing well, is it?
I'm thinking this is the new world. Authors don't need a traditional publisher. Musicians don't need a record label to distribute their work. We're experiencing the democratization of the workplace and
Mhm.
the world, and we need to know it as adult leaders. Yeah.
I didn't fully understand something you said about uh, you were talking about once the young person is on the job, if they start feeling restless, you might create an internal gig
Yeah.
economy
Yes.
for them. How does that work, and what is that?
Well, this is when companies create a startup feel within an established organization that may have been around forever. So there's an entrepreneurial zone. Maybe they put some Gen Zers on it, definitely people under 40, and some creatives, but you want maybe some millennials there too, or maybe even an Xer. But this zone, you set aside budget for it, and they're tasked with solving a problem as if you were a startup. maybe a couple of problems. Maybe they meet for 6 months and then they sunset that little task force.
Mm-hmm.
But it feels like a startup, which is what they love. So it's kind of the best of both worlds. I'll give you a great example of what not to do, Leah. Early in the book, I talk about my buddy Colin. Colin Webb is a 20-something. I met him in high school. I was part of his leadership development at a public high school in Gwinnett County. When he graduated, he went off to MIT. So he's a smart young man. When he graduated from MIT, you can imagine he got a lot of job offers. Well, he decided to move from the Boston area to Detroit, Michigan, to work for one of the big three automakers, General Motors. They put Colin in the smart car division, and he was good for that job. But as a Gen Zer, he's looking around, seeing all these very traditional and even old-fashioned ways of doing things. And so he started writing down ideas. This is so much a young professional. Starting writing down ideas. We need to do that process better here. We need to do this system better here. He took the ideas to a supervisor, but he was shut down.
Oh.
He was told, hey, we didn't hire you for ideas. Keep your head down, keep your nose to the grindstone, do your work. Well, get this. Colin said, yes, sir. But he went back to his computer and he emailed the CEO of General Motors, Mary Barra. Yes. And said, dear Mary, it's Colin. You don't know me, but I'm new here and I have some great ideas. And he listed the ideas. Now that can sound quite arrogant and maybe even disrespectful. She didn't take it that way at all. She got back to him the same day and said, Colin, these are great ideas. Let me take them to my executive team and see what they think. She took them to the exec team. They agreed. These were great ideas. But it's a big company. By the time those ideas made their way down the org chart to the middle manager and the supervisor, they died on the vine again. In fact, Colin was told, you have to be around here 8 years before you get to lead anything.
Oh.
Well, you might as well have told him to leave. Colin left within a year. Since then has started 2 companies, just sold one of them. He's doing quite well financially right now. And Leah, the latest company he just started, he calls it Avatar Robotics, where you can be in Orlando, Florida and pick up an object and something moves in Sacramento, California. I don't know how it works, but I'm saying this is Gen Z who knows stuff I don't know. So I need to listen more than I ever used to listen. I need to coach more than I ever used to coach. I think that's our only way to thrive in the future. Yeah.
They are so aware of finding what's possible and not being restricted in their thinking. And, if you're not thinking that way, your competition is.
Yeah, it's true. You're right.
That was a big loss for GM and the original employer too.
No doubt.
What's your final encouragement to people in older age cohorts in appreciating Gen Z?
Yeah. I'll tell a quick story that I tell in the book, but I think it's such a great closing thought. A friend of mine, Teresa, said something to me that I cherish. She said, Generation Z is the sandpaper on my leadership. It polishes you up. When Neil Armstrong walked on the moon, that space capsule landed on the moon, the average age of the operators, 27 years old.
Wow.
And the one that actually said go, not no, to pull the trigger and put the capsule down, Jack Garman, 23 years old, 1 year out of college. Now,
Amazing.
Here's the cool news. Those guys like you and me, Leah, that were a little bit older, they didn't step away. They were called SimSups, simulator supervisors. They were the mentors. They were the coaches. They were helping them not screw up too badly, that sort of thing.
Sure.
But don't you love it that they said, we're going to trust you. You know what you're doing. And of course, they were very idealistic. They said, we're going to do this, right out of college. That's what you think, Yeah. But I'm saying maybe we need to take another moonshot today in our own organizations and say, how could we trust those young Gen Zers? And we stay in their life. We keep coaching and mentoring, but we really begin to say, I'm going to trust you to do what you know to do and what you can do.
Beautiful. Tim, as always, it's been great talking with you. Thank you for so generously sharing your time and your knowledge today. And everyone, you can find Tim at
TimElmore.com, and you can find the book there too. The book is called The Future Begins with Z, 9 Strategies to Lead Generation Z as they upset or disrupt the workplace. Thanks, Leah. It's always great to talk to you. I always am invigorated by your thoughts and questions.
Oh, thank you. Well, this episode has been brought to you by the Herzog Foundation. The views and positions expressed may not be supported by Herzog, but frankly, I can't imagine today's being anything but just a wonderful blessing to everybody. Subscribe and review Conversation Balloons on your favorite podcast platform. Find me at leahfarish.com and on Instagram at LeahFarish.